Hey, it's Clay. Welcome to another video. This is going to be a golf swing analysis for Aiden 4-pack. He's got some concerns here about fade and potentially a slice. Wondering about how to move the ball right to left. So let's go ahead and take a look at his swing. Looks like you're capable of making a pretty athletic movement. So nice job on that, and got some nice pieces here to work with. Let's see if we can't get a little bit of correction and kind of keep things moving in the right direction. So to start with, maybe some setup things to clean up. Some of this is going to be a little bit, maybe nitpicky is the word, but setup I think is always pretty critical. First thing I would consider looking at is your grip. I can't really see your grip from this angle. I can kind of see it a little bit right here, but I just would be cautious that you have, anytime I hear that someone is struggling with fading or slicing, I immediately think that their grip might be a little too weak. Now, it's oftentimes not the only thing that needs to fix, but it's a really easy thing that can help you. The most basic concept to take away is that the cause of a slice is that your club face is open relative to the path that it is traveling upon. And what I mean by that is if I track the face from these frames here, now I'm going to lose it at some point, but so if this is where your face is, so it's traveling to here, to here, to here. Okay, so you think about it like an arc in three-dimensional space, and it came from back here. So this is the path that the club is traveling upon, and when it intersects with the ball, it is open relative to that path. And so to stop slicing, you need to address both the path that it's traveling upon sometimes, but more than anything else, the club face being square. And I'm specifically looking at this frame right here. I think this is a very key moment in the golf swing. You've got just a tiny fraction of a second from now until impact, and look at how open the face is. It's basically 90 degrees perpendicular to the ground. And I think that you will find that many other swings from high-level tour players, or those especially that move the ball right to left, will have the club face pointing more kind of maybe somewhere like this, maybe at the ball or slightly above that. And so the easiest way to get the club more in that position is simply to change your grip and to make it stronger. So check that. Again, I can't really see it, give you more specific recommendations, but definitely check that out. Point number 2, let's talk a little bit about posture. I'm going to come back to this a little bit, but there's a little bit of early extension going on. And I've got some other videos on my channel about my breakthrough with early extension. It's talking about anterior pelvic tilt. It's kind of a big, complicated word, but it's basically talking about your posture in your butt, specifically how you are tilting it. And you look at this point like you have a pretty athletic setup, which is certainly good, and I understand that you want to swing the club fast, and if you've played other sports, you want to get into an athletic position. But I would argue that if I draw a line here, and if you watch, now the camera is moving a little bit, but if you watch right here, you can see how your hips are moving forward, and you're getting this kind of curve here in your back. If you think about like a defensive position for a shortstop or a basketball player, right, they are reacting to something happening. In golf, it's not really that way, and you want to actually be in your most athletic position coming on the downswing. And so to be kind of losing that posture here is not very helpful. So one of the things I would recommend is you'd actually try to get more of this look where your butt is kind of moved this way and your back is slightly more rounded. So it's called kind of like an old man posture, which is known as posterior pelvic tilt. So if you go back to this setup and if you kind of try to take your hips and move them just a tiny bit forward, get a little bit of, and it's not so much forward as it is tilting your pelvis up. Okay, so if you imagine there's a laser beam coming out of your belt loop, you want to have it so that instead of pointing kind of here, just slightly up. And then maybe just like to see slightly less knee flex. And it looks like you're choking down a little bit on the club, which is fine. but it does indicate to me you've got a little room to stand slightly taller. Okay, one of the things that I really want to talk about is your takeaway. Okay, so you display one of the classic symptoms of someone who slices the ball, and that would be an inside takeaway movement. And really, if you watch your takeaway, what is happening? Okay, so just for these first couple frames right here, your shoulders have not moved, your hips haven't moved, your knees haven't moved. Almost all of it has been here in the wrists, right? If I just circle, you can see how you're basically, imagine if you're driving a car, if you have your hands at 9, 10, and 2, or whatever they teach these days, and you would turn to the right, that's basically what you've done, where this right elbow has come down, and this elbow is kind of rotating up over top, right? Watch the right elbow come down, the left elbow come over top. And I would argue that that's a pretty problematic movement, and that's definitely something that's contributing to your slicing. What I would recommend, let me pull this up here a second. This is a drill that you can use. It's an excellent drill. If you could get an alignment stick, you can go to your hardware store and get like a driveway reflective shaft. It'll work. And you hold it alongside the club so it creates this extension off the grip. And then when you watch how so he sets up a little bit weird, right? You can't set up normally. If you would, it would be poking into your body. But as he takes the club away, watch how this extension shaft is riding down his left thigh. And then he goes up, okay? That's the feeling that I want for you to have. Watch it one more time. Right there. See how it maintains contact and rides along his left thigh? And if you notice, the club, therefore, is pointing out. The club head is outside his hands. And then from there, he just cocks his wrist, and the club comes up, and he continues to rotate his body. So coming back to your swing, right? Instead of doing the driving motion where you turn the steering wheel to the right, resist that, and instead feel as if, again, if you have an extension coming out of this, watch how that starts pointing. Look at how right here, the extension will be pointing way over here. There's no way it would contact your body. Okay, so you want to make sure that you try to change this so that when you get to this position, you'd want to be more like here. And there's the head of the club. And if this, from this point on, all you're going to do is cock your wrists up. So these wrist bones, instead of turning like a steering wheel motion, they're just going to cock up. And then you're going to turn your shoulders, turn your hips. And that's how you complete your backswing motion. And a lot of times in the golf swing, there's an equal and opposite effect, right? So because your takeaway comes to the inside, then you have no choice but on the downswing but to come over the top, which is, I think, part of what we see. If we continue on, you'll notice that at this position, your left arm is well across. Right? If this is kind of parallel to the target line. So the inside takeaway gets you off to a bad start, and then it only gets a little bit worse because your left arm continues to drift across your chest too far. At this position, you really want it to be more in line with your target line. So as if your left arm were kind of more out here, and then look at your right elbow is getting stuck kind of behind your side. And then at the top, you get in this position where, again, your right elbow is way back behind your body and your left arm is pretty low. It's actually below. So if this is where your shoulders are at, this is where your left arm is, you're actually below that point. Typically, you want your left arm, even with your shoulder line or maybe a little bit above it. Maybe, and so then from that position, you have to come over the top. And look at this. If I draw the line here, honestly, this is a great spot for you to be in your backswing, right? Your left arm is more in line with your target line. Your right elbow is kind of tucked here in. And, so if this is where the club is at in the downswing, let's look at where it was in the backswing. I mean, it's way back over here. So you have that, when talk about coming over the top, that's what we're referring to. And that over the top movement combined with an open club face is the recipe for a slice. So, if you're able to get the takeaway moving where the club, instead of getting in this position where you're setting you're kind of turning your forearms, if you would just set your wrist by cocking your wrist up and turn your shoulders and your hips, the club would be more outside. You can lift it kind of straight up from here. And again, you want to be keeping your hands kind of more in front of your torso and turning your hips and shoulders. Okay? Then if you get up to the top, let's imagine that your left arm is moving kind of up here and your right arm is more kind of in this position and the club's up here. Well, then you've got all the room in the world to drop it down into the slot and attack the ball more from the inside. Combine that with a little bit stronger grip, and you will be having a recipe for a draw. Okay? I'm not going to get too much into the, you do display some early extension here, which I talked a little bit about with your setup. And then it does appear to be kind of more of a flip-styled release, which is kind of evidenced here in this photograph where you can see this relationship here between your forearm and your wrist appears to be very, you've got your wrist, this is called extension of the wrist, where you are flexing it back, and what you really want is to be supinating that left wrist or turning it as if you're turning a doorknob. But I'm not going to get too deep into those issues because there's a lot of other things of fundamentals get in place before we get there. So start with your grip, start with your takeaway movement, and those things are actually some of the easier changes to make in the golf swing because you can practice that without having a golf ball in front of you. You can do a grip change is something that just takes time. The takeaway change is something that just you can do that in your living room. Then the last thing I want to mention, so we've talked about grip, we've talked about takeaway, some other things, but the next big thing I want to mention, once you get those two things really under your belt, I would highly recommend you think about your wrists. And so specifically I'm talking about your left wrist, okay? Now in this position you have a little bit of cup, meaning it kind of takes this angle right here. It's called extension. And that is also going to open the club face, okay? And you look like you're looking at this frame, you continue to maintain that extension well kind of here into the downswing, okay? And what I want you to try and feel like is when you get to the top, try to maintain that your left wrist is flat. And what that might feel like is that you're actually having to bow it or do what is kind of like a motorcycle movement, as if you're going to rev the engine on a motorcycle with your left hand. Realize that doesn't actually happen, but imagine it's a left-handed motorcycle movement where you're taking it and you're bowing it back this way, curving it down. Okay, that will help close the club face as well. So I really think that if you work on that grip and the takeaway, backswing pieces, and then get the wrist in a better position, I really think from there you just swing down through the ball like you've been doing, and you'll be in a better position to really create the shot shape you want to see. Please let me know if you have any thoughts or questions down below, and consider subscribing for more golf content like this. I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks, bye.